one of the questions that came in from Brother Lorenzo Gonzalez was, where is Rick Rubin in the architecture that you had placed on the screen?
Is brother with us? Brother with us to hear, because I did see that question. Is brother with us to hear our response to this question?
Not yet. Not yet. You want to give it a few minutes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, I want to give a big old shout out to Miss Bethany Allen. It is so nice to see you there, sister. And I know we're having some issues with some of our chats. So, our sound. So give us a few minutes. I just wanted to recognize you there. Ms. Bethany Allen is one of our Gold Star family members. And we, just as a way of explanation, all of those who have lost someone in our community, we refer to as Gold Star families. Just as the United States of America, when they send people off to war and they lose soldiers, then those families are referred to as Gold Star families. But I was in Chicago in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003. And during those years, the United States of America lost, I believe, a total of 600 soldiers in Iraq. But in 2001, we lost 666 on the streets of Chicago alone. In 2002, we lost 647. In 2003, we were down like 619. So we tripled on the streets of Chicago what happened in a full theater of war. So it was in that spirit that I thought about the mothers, thought about those fathers who were trying to bring children, sons primarily in our community, to manhood. And it is harder. They would have a better chance of raising their child to manhood if they sent them to Iraq with an M16 than they would send them to school with a backpack in Chicago. That's what we're dealing with. So Bethany Allen is one. She did not lose her son, she lost her husband. And, you know, a lot of times when we lose, it has become so commonplace in our community that our mothers, our wives, our daughters, they lose us and just keep it moving. They can't stop. You know, there's still bills to pay. Sometimes they have children or other children. You still have to show up and be what it is they need you to be. And that's why this is an atonement project, because on our watch, they're not supposed to bear that weight alone. We have to pick up that weight with them. And until we do that, history can't even record that there was a man among us. It can't do it. Only when we pick up our responsibility will history look and say, oh, there's a man, and check it out. So that's my goal, is that we realize the full potency of our manhood in this life, in this day. I don't want another day of being a nigga. I don't know about y'all. I did that a long time. I don't need one more day, not one more minute being a nigga. I don't need another huff or puff of smoke. I don't need another bump. I don't need another sip or a slurp. None of that. You know what I mean? I'm ready for my manhood now, and I'm ready to put my shoulder. In fact, it's not even ready. That's why I am putting my shoulder to this grindstone and pushing like hell, you know? So I think, let me see. I don't see. Hey, there's my sister Felicia. Okay, I don't see our brother
It's okay.
Lorenzo.
We can still answer it. I'm trying to hope. So can we screen share? Can I put that back up? It's telling me host disabled participant screen sharing.
I'm not the host. Hold on. Maybe I can do it from this space. No. Unfortunately, not yet. I know that Sister Erica is trying to work with the tech team. So hopefully in the next few minutes, you will be able to share your screen.
Do we have any more questions? And we can double back to this one, being that there was a question about the graph. I would like to.
Yes, sir.
Show the graph as I answer it.
And we have another question. Can you tell us about other key individuals who are responsible for engineering the degenerative culture in the hip hop culture and rap music today?
Sure. Had I had more time, trying to pick moments. How do you select and how do you omit when you have set time? One moment that I wanted to highlight, and which I will do now, is the WAP moment. Remember WAP? What was it, last year? The WAP phenomenon. Megan Thee Stallion, City Girls. Ratchet hip hop. The hot girl phenomenon, the 2020 iteration of hot girl, is the revitalization of ratchetness. Leroy Cohen, who is on the graph, attempted to jumpstart ratchet hip hop with his group Bitches with Problems. Now, I mentioned Doug Morris, the Jewish executive, who became, to whom we owe, in truth, his money. Death row, our ability to enjoy or be affected negatively or positively by death row, its catalog, and its reality. But Doug Morris's first hip hop act signed was Two Live Crew. The birth of porn rap we owe to Doug Morris. The birth of murder rap, Death Row, in its most caricaturist form, we could say we owe to Doug Morris. Leroy Cohen, the Israeli general, they say he's called, of hip hop. He tried to put together a female version of Two Live Crew called Bitches with Problems. And their debut album was called Bitches. Leroy Cohen, the Israeli general, he's Israeli literally, not metaphorically. He carries an Israeli passport. He has Israeli citizenship. His father, Leroy Cohen, fought in the early wars to claim the land of Palestine for Israel. Leroy Cohen, in introducing Bitches with Problems, said that his bitches are more representative of the urban Black girl than Queen Latifah and her queendom. That's not real, he would have us believe then, but his bitches are real. Why do I lay that base? Leo Cohen's initial attempt to introduce ratchet hip hop, it failed. His proteges, Craig Cowman and Julie Greenwald, also Jews, they found success in Little Kim. Little Kim's ratchet rap, that was Craig Cowman's with Atlantic at the time, who gave us that. Yes, I know her relationship to Biggie and Biggie's coaching of her lyrically, but the rollout of the project, her hardcore project with the pornography visuals, that embarrassed her and made her uncomfortable because Kimberly Jones wasn't Little Kim. They were two different people. Craig Cowman and Julie Greenwald, the proteges of Leo Cohen, had a little more success, but now let's bring it up to WAP. Megan Thee Stallion was the first lady on Leo Cohen's label 300. She is his artist. City Girls, of course, on Quality Control, and Coach K, they're his artists, but Coach K let us know that his mentor is Leo Cohen. So there are two acceptable iterations or articulations of Blackness that are acceptable in hip hop. In fact, that are necessary if you want to be successful in commercial rap music, let's say that. If you want to be a successful commercial rap artist, you have, it was two, not as, only three options. Either you adopt the script, the nigga killing nigga script, the bully coon script, or you adopt and advance the bad getting slut or Black Jezebel script, or now you adopt the queer, the Black queer, the Black sissy script. Leo Cohen in this new hot girl phenomena is a resurrection of the Black Jezebel in hip hop. We haven't seen the likes of it since, I don't think, since Little Kim. Not that, excuse me, it hasn't been there, but to such an extent, the level of ratchetness, the level of Jezebelness that the new hot girl, the new iteration of hot girl is giving us, we haven't seen since Little Kim. And the same ones who were behind Little Kim in hardcore are the ones behind WAP. So the WAP phenomenon was the success, ultimate success of Leo Cohen, the Israeli general of hip hop. And of course, there's others, but we won't dissertate.
You should be able to share your screen now too, brother. There you
And I will make one final note on Leo Cohen, because we're talking about the war on murder, the war on murder culture. Leroy Cohen, the Israeli general of hip hop, greatly influenced among everybody else. He greatly influenced Irv Gotti. See, murder culture, hip hop was morphed into a murder culture. And so Death Row Records and Murder Inc. Now, very interesting. I remember listening to Irv Gotti in the midst of his legal troubles. And he was on one of the news stations, I believe it was CNN. And he had just been acquitted. And he was saying to the anchor, he was saying, no, why would they think I'm involved in the criminality that I was charged with? I believe, if I recall, Brother Enoch, they tried to connect him with drug dealers and drug money. And Irv Gotti's self-defense was, at least to the press, was, I don't know why anybody would ever think I would be involved in such criminality. If you check my record, I've never been involved in criminality in my life. Why would I start now that I'm famous? And when I heard that, I couldn't get out of my mind Murder Inc. So you just let us know that you've never been engaged in criminality, but your label is Murder Inc. You're not a murderer, but you are promoting murder. Now, what's interesting is that Leroy Cohen encouraged that name, Murder Inc. Irv Gotti would later drop Murder, and the label was just called the Inc. And do you know who encouraged him to drop Murder from the label title? The Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. So the dynamic, this tension between God and devil, has played itself out in the shadows of hip hop from the very beginning. And so the question, where is Rick Rubin in this graph? Can we see that graph? So first I'll say this. This is a 2019 edition. It's been updated. There's certainly, I could not put everybody on here, but there are some that, for example, Tony Mottola, very important. In the updated version of this graph, he is right there next to Doug's lieutenant. Where is Rick Rubin? Not a bad question. I don't know where I would put Rick Rubin in this graph. Let me explain why. Now, of course, the point of the emphasis of this graph, the architecture, the emphasis is on tier 1, tier 2, and when you get to sub tier 3, we can put a whole lot of names under tier 3. All of the artists, of course, and their connections to the upper tiers cannot be represented here. But let's talk about Rick Rubin. Now, almost all of these non-artists are Jewish. Almost all of them. Not all of them, but almost all of them are Jewish. That is not accidental. Rick Rubin, too, is a Jew. Rick Rubin and our brother founded Def Records. Russell Simmons founded Def Jam Records. Hip hop at that time, as you know, Run DMC and LL Cool J, it was before the shit was turned. Now, with Rick Rubin's significance comes with Ghetto Boys, at least for the development that I'm describing. Rick Rubin, of course, he abandoned hip hop. Rick Rubin was anti-Public Enemy as when Public Enemy got political, and he abandoned hip hop for rock and roll. Rick Rubin, and I forgot to mention CBS Records. When I mentioned CBS Records, that sponsored the Jack the Rapper dinner that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gave the keynote address to. I mentioned CBS Records is the home to Clive Davis and the notorious Walter Yitnikoff, two notorious Brooklyn Jewish music industry executives. When Public Enemy had its controversy and Professor Griff made his statements because they are students of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. And Professor Griff, the fruit of Islam, made his comments about Jews, and there was this great controversy. And Jews, the Jewish Defense League, had organized teams with weapons to kill Professor Griff. And Walter Yetnikoff, who is over CBS Records, he said that his first instinct was to can Public Enemy and throw Professor Griff into the East River. Now, that's not hyperbole. Why was 280-pound Suge Knight scared of 120-pound Jimmy Iovine and Doug Morris? The same reason Walter Yetnikoff could seriously contemplate throwing Professor Griff in the East River, because the Jewish mafia / gay mafia with David Geffen, they rightly wear the name mafia. Yetnikoff said that he decided not to because Public Enemy's records were making him millions. Rick Rubin abandoned Def Jam Records. Rick Rubin was a fan of Meyer Kahane, the hateful Jew, whose JDL soldiers were the ones who organized to kill Professor Griff. But as Rick Rubin exited, Leroy Cohen came in and filled his shoes and took it to the next level. So now, Rick Rubin got back into hip hop with Ghetto Boys. We have a whole chapter on Ghetto Boys in our book because Ghetto Boys became the pioneers of slasher rap. Uber violent, gory rap music. That was a Jewish project because the Ghetto Boys didn't start off as slasher rappers. They started off as Run DMC type rappers, but Jay Prince came to New York and had a sit down with Leroy Cohen, the Israeli general. Jay Prince went back to Texas and totally reconfigured the Ghetto Boys, and that's how we get the legendary Ghetto Boys of lunatic fame and trigger happy nigga fame and slasher rap fame. Rick Rubin was an integral part of that process. So Rick Rubin is a part of the whole story. I could not capture the whole story on this graph, but as Rick Rubin made his exit, Leroy Cohen made his entry, and Leroy Cohen is by far the much more dominant presence in the story of hip hop as it will unfold.
Thank you. I do want to ask if Brother Enoch, Nile, or Dennis would like to speak to that as well, or do we want to move on to another question?
I don't need to, brother.
Okay. All right. Let me see. There was what are your thoughts on Snoop Dogg buying Death Row Records? And that's for any of you panelists.
I'm not inclined to dominate this backstage, so whoever wants to share, please do.
And let me ask.
I don't have any it's interesting to see where it will go. Snoop Dogg, our dear brother, in his relationship to the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan, Snoop is profoundly conscious. Snoop is in the midst of his awakening, his wokeness. I'm interested to see what he does with Death Row Records. Now, of course, as Irv Gotti got the wisdom to take murder out of the title so as not to perpetuate murder culture, I'll be interested to see what the more enlightened and aware and conscious Snoop Dogg does with Death Row. And what iteration of Death Row will we see and what role it will play in eradicating or ending the murder culture that Death Row, classic Death Row, had fed so enormously.
We had another question. Why can't our people recognize these racist insults from the white supremacists that control the industry? Were
Is
you
that
about
question for Brother Wesley?
Well,
to, for whoever?
no, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? Why aren't Black people more sensitive to not just the insults, but the assaults? Not only are we too often not aware that we're being insulted, Black folks go through our day suffering innumerable assaults, and we are totally oblivious to them. And so there is, I would say, on one level, a scientific explanation, the way they have numbed our amygdala. See, the amygdala, that nut-sized part of our brain, which processes threats in our environment. But we've documented how these wicked scientists deliberately numbed our amygdala. And they numbed our amygdala through these chemicals, which we call recreational drugs, a key chemical of which is this weaponized marijuana. It dampens our amygdala, so we are not as conscious to assaults, to threats in our environment as we should be, nor are we conscious of insults as we should be.
And I know Dennis is having a problem unmuting. Let me get on that with our tech, and Brother Enoch is too. Okay, well that explains why y'all so quiet.
Brother Scott,
Yes, sir.
I saw something in the queue that was pretty interesting. A sister brought up the subject of self-hate, and why we can't seem to mitigate that. And that was very interesting to me that she brought that up. I like to when I hear things like that, I like to think about our responsibility when we get knowledge, when we learn something. It's not for the sake of getting fat in the head. Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Okay, our people have been deprived of that truth, but when we know the truth, once you get it, you learn to love it. And once you love it, you will love knowledge. And see, that's where it gets complicated, because now you have acquired knowledge, but you have a responsibility. So what is your ability to respond when you get some knowledge? Okay. And that's basically the problem, that we don't know how to apply the knowledge that we have. So we continue along the path that we happen to be on. My thrust into pop culture is a general thrust. I look at all of it holistically because it's all interconnected. It's inextricably bound together. When we talk about pop culture, you know, the practices, the beliefs, and the objects that represent meanings of a social system, you're talking about TV and movies and radio and slang and fashion and amplified music and computers and of course the internet, is more than a diversion. You know, a lot of people think that's just recreation, that's entertainment. It's not. It's more than a diversion, because it exposes people of all ages to sex and drugs and violence, and it influences the way that teenagers dress, think, and act. Okay. And these teenagers become adults, and they end up uh, you know, in the community, applying what it is that they know. And a lot of times they end up cannibalizing their own people because they don't know. So, you know, those are the things that, you know, we need to address when it comes to pop culture. As far as, is Dennis, are you back on now? Can he hear? Oh, I don't know. I see him look up. So I don't
So
know. Oh, good, good.
now I just came back in. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about globalization and depopulation and what that has to do with pop culture, because again, there's a one-to-one correlation between all three. And that's basically the challenge of the people who are trying to put this conference together in April. I think we've done it successfully, but there's it's the challenge that lies before us is to tie these three concepts together so that people can see how they relate and how they have a definite correlation to your life. At present, so the entire pop culture issue, pop culture as an entity, is the way that we have been conditioned and manipulated in order to accept what's coming down the pipe. And we need to understand that. But I was hoping that earlier, you didn't have a lot of time, but I was hoping that you would have made the connection earlier when you spoke.
Well, how do I put this? There is really no such thing as popular culture.
That's right.
So that's the first problem. You take, for example, the Woodstock Festival. Everybody talks about Woodstock, right? Great moment in whatever, cultural history. What is it really? There's a guy named John Roberts. He had a lot of money. He had a pharmaceutical fortune. Put an ad in the New York Times and he said, young men with unlimited capital looking for interesting, legitimate investment opportunities and business propositions. So what happened was two guys show up. Artie Kornfeld from Brooklyn, Mike Lang, also from Brooklyn. They say, we got an idea. We want to build a music studio up where Bob Dylan lives. Dylan lived in Woodstock. Now, the issue is we got a gimmick. We think if we had a music festival up there, like 50, 60,000 people, that we can then get the money to build the studio, and then people are going to be attracted because now it's a big deal. All right. So Woodstock happens. A lot of things go on there. This becomes projected as this spontaneous occurrence. All these various people, some of them are hippies, some of them are anti-war people, all sorts of people, right? Just showed up there. And, but what people don't know is that the movie rights for this had already been worked out. That launched the entire culture of the festival. Now, there were a few things that had happened before that. There had been jazz festivals, of course, at Newport, but those were very small, relatively small. There was the Monterey Pop Festival over in California. But what we are talking about is the entire platform, the entire substructure of everything that people today talk about in terms of music events was all shaped by that event. Now, Brother Wesley has already gone through many times now, sort of the later part of that. But if you don't know this beginning part, then you don't know that it's just the entirety of the thing that was called. Funkadelic was mentioned. Funkadelic came about pretty much the same way that the Grateful Dead came about. Grateful Dead was the same thing. Stanford University was running a drug program in the veteran section. They had a guy named Ken Kesey. He was a writer. He went through their thing. He then founded what became the group called the Grateful Dead, which never had a hit record, ever. But was called, and you can look this up, there's all sorts of business marketing analysis of the Grateful Dead. They're called one of the most successful marketing companies in American history. They never had a hit record, never on the radio. What were they marketing? LSD. I mean, and that's what the electric Kool-Aid acid test was. That was done right on the border of the ghetto in San Francisco. That's what the Fillmore district was, where the Fillmore thing. And these things are the background to what you are, or you've already elaborated extensively. So that's the first element of it. The second thing is that if you can make depopulation popular, that's the connection. Look at the way in which hip hop was then morphed in other countries with other people who are, in other words, Armenian, or they're Italian. They're rappers. They're not doing what was being done in the Bronx or Queens. They're doing an adaptation of that, and then it's used for an entirely different purpose. It's blamed on Black people in America, but its function now becomes connected into all sorts of things. It can be terrorism, it can be drug running, it can be all sorts of things. It actually doesn't even look really a lot like what you do, but the people that are doing it say it looks like what you do. So then the stigma of it all is on you, but the function is used in these other ways. And so the way that's how this thing works. It was done. You mentioned, Chuck D referenced that also, this idea of there's a term for that, where you go from being 15 to 35, you extend it adolescence. It's called neoteny. That's the term for that. Neoteny, neoteny. It's like Peter Pan, right? I will never grow up. Or what was done or was caused to be done to Michael Jackson. Same thing. I'm not talking about whether or not Michael Jackson was that. That's not what I said. But I'm talking about the entire fashioning of the phenomenon around him, which has to do more with not the person, but the perception that then becomes the currency. And that's what popular culture becomes. So you create a whole set of perceptions that may be completely unrelated to the individual. Look at what was done, for example, to Public Enemy, as was already said. So I would just lay that out. I used something at the beginning. I wanted to repeat it because it's the easiest way to understand how this whole thing works. They are playing a game. They are playing at not playing a game. If I show them that I know what they are doing, they will see me and I will be punished. So I must play their game of not saying, I see the game. And that's the relationship between, right, the oppressed and the oppressor. That is what this thing is. And that is what this so-called popular culture. It's a culture of warfare. And you've got to be able to understand that to defeat it.
Let me ask. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll mute.
No, that's me. You're good. You don't have to mute. Let me ask this. For me, growing up, right when it was hitting hip hop and watching it go from hip hop to strip hop, I would like to start off with Brother Enoch, but I want to open up the floor for both you, Brother Dennis, and you, Brother Wesley, and Brother Nile, if you would like to. Would you speak to the process, the old race records and mainstreaming our red light district, to whereas when we were coming up, you could tell the difference between a regular girl and a prostitute and a stripper, and that line blurred. So could you speak to that?
Well, there's an artist by the name of Lucille Bogan. She came out in the 1930s, and that was a race record, which if I played it right now, would put everybody on here into a very shameful type of disposition, because she would put Brother Wesley, Meg the Stallion to shame. He literally would make Lil Kim or Cardi B or Nicki Minaj actually blush when you compare what she said in the 30s to what they're saying right now. It's a song called Till the Cows Come Home. And that song was extremely explicit in language, the vulgarity, and everything. So, I want to kind of put this in this perspective. when you read books like Leroy Jones, Blues People, which when I read that book for the first time, after I read it, I just shook my head because he went through every genre of music that was a departure from quote unquote Negro spirituals, where we singing and praying to the Almighty and asking for strength to get through, working from can't see, morning to can't see night with no pay. We were doing Negro spirituals. And every genre of music that went away from that went away from the spirit in some form or fashion. However, we still had to have spirit. So drugs and alcohol and everything that was an alteration of our spirit because we wanted to reach an altered state. So prayer and all the things that come from a natural spiritual perspective, where we began, of course, during our enslavement, we were given liquor, and it was at Christmas time, we would be able to drink a little liquor, drink a little of the master's liquor and eat what the master would give us. However, during our so-called freedom journey, the Emancipation Proclamation, we went through a process where all of our art forms began to deviate away more and more and more from the reliance on our creator. And we began to produce art forms. And in the book, Blues People, Leroy Jones, also known as Amiri Baraka, began to look at not only the style of the music, but he also was looking at how it was affected in terms of the socioeconomic and socio-psychological realities that we as a people were going through. And as he did that, he said that towards the turn of the century, there would be a music that would be a mirror reflection of the condition of the Black man and woman in America. And when I read that and I saw that, I said, he's talking about hip hop. Because hip hop is a mirror reflection is when hip hop began to become more distributed and more received on radio stations. Hip hop was pulling from every other genre. So James Brown began to get acknowledged, even though hip hop artists was sampling James Brown like crazy. He is hip hop. However, there began to become more of an acknowledgement of James Brown. Then the Isley Brothers got brought back in the sense of the new generation learning about the Isley Brothers who didn't know. Then Thelonious Monk, then Coltrane. And then, so you begin to see the different variations of hip hop take form because of the pull on other genres that had passed in terms of their dominancy amongst the people. However, the problem is always when our enemies began to capture what it is that we have, and then they began to dictate. So in the history of hip hop, I think Dr. Wesley may have mentioned what Kim Jones, who she really was, and how Lil' Kim and Kim Jones, there's a conflict there in terms of the reality of their lifestyles. Well, 50 Cent, he promoted Hennessy and all types of alcohol. However, he got on the interview and he said, I don't even drink alcohol. I put iced tea in my bottle because I got to deal with these people. That's exactly what he said. So he has a ginormous bottle of Hennessy on the stage, but that's all money. Then you started having some artists, they would rent out space in their lyrics. So if you want me to talk about a certain type of alcohol, you have to pay me, and then I'll say so many times this brand of alcohol in my rhymes. Of course, it got so bad, I think after the artist P.D. Pablo, who born and raised in North Carolina, once he put it out there that he was allowing, I think it was, I forgot which alcohol that he had, because he said he drinks it and they pay me. So he allowed for that to be part of his song. When you begin to see Future and other artists say Percocet 10 million times, on a record. Well, guess what? If their album, if they're saying Percocet that many times, you're absolutely correct. That's not by accident. That is very strategic, marketing. And so when you start looking at how Ice Cube and other artists begin to go the route of Luke, and some of the artists that was predominantly looking at sex as their vehicle. They weren't talking too much about the murder and the killing. They were just talking about a lot of sexual things. Well, when strip clubs became the meeting place for the music industry, and I'm not just saying hip hop, the entire music industry, they went away from meeting in, different, hotels and different places. And so the strip club became the spot where they would have industry meetings. Now, the strip club, of course, is nothing new. As a matter of fact, the Gentlemen's Club, of course, started on the plantation. And you had Black men and women who were enslaved that were the ones that was doing the stripping and all other kinds of acts they were forced to do or that they joined in on. So I'm making this statement just to say that the history of what we're communicating, of course, is extremely significant, and all the different aspects, the socioeconomic, political aspects to this, they're all in play right now. And I love the quote that you repeated, Brother Speed, in terms of the game, because once you let them know that you know the game and you refuse to be a pawn in the game, and that's when it becomes a huge problem, because now the question becomes, how many people are you going to inform about this? Because now we got to figure a way to counteract what you're doing. So I'll just stop right there and let the other panelists communicate. And I see we have some more questions as well.
Okay. That's product placement that they had in there. Because I think somebody mentioned it too. What I thought about was when how hot it was when the St. Ives commercial came out, when all the rappers started rapping about St. Ives, because before that, everybody was on Old English because of NWA, But Brother Dennis, it looked like you had a thought on that.
Well, just do it like this. You got it just there with the commodification idea. See, what you did was slavery, of course, Black people were commodities. Well, what if you create a globalized culture where commodification becomes the character of daily life? Everybody knows that uses the phone, right? How that works. They sell, quote, your information. What does that mean? They sell your preferences. But how does that work? The algorithm is there to determine how you shape and shift and change your preferences to prefer what you're supposed to prefer. All right. Now, integrate into that what people keep calling the function of culture. And I very much think, Brother Enoch, that this idea of the spiritual is very important, because that's exactly the point. That's an interesting thing to look at, because you will find that in the spirituals, if you look at them all, there's no word of anger in there. Because why? Because people are transcending this from the inside, right? That's what they're trying to do. Because in other words, they got to live, and to literally stay alive, they have to have a concept of the divine that is being expressed, which is what that does. Now, that has tremendous energy. It has tremendous energy, and that's what people derive from all this different stuff. And that's, as we know, every form of music. You take anything from a particular, anything in America comes out of that. And many times, even things that people don't even think are Black, like country and Western. Those things all come out of it. All you got to do is trace it. But coming back to the point about the idea of commodification and how we fight it. Right now, President of the United States just made another speech about war. Everybody knows about the number of people we're chewing up around the planet in wars. Everybody knows about how the Muslims did 9/11. Really? But that's what the perception is. See, so we just talked a few minutes ago about perception, that Lil' Kim is different than the person. That Michael Jackson, very different than the way in which he begins to become perceived, right? Because you and I become props to our own identity. So identity is created around us, right? I mean, like I'm in the Schiller Institute. Schiller Institute and all that was started by Lyndon LaRouche. Lyndon LaRouche has now come down in history as being right-wing, fascist, this, that, except he and Minister Farrakhan met on several occasions, 3 occasions in specific. He was a major supporter of the Million Man March. Not only that, of course, where we had our problem was with the Anti-Defamation League. Famously, for people who may not know that here, We wrote a book called Dope Incorporated many years ago, back in 1979, 1980, laid out how this whole thing worked, talked about British opium trade and all that. But in fact, the Bronfman question or Tavistock Institute, all that stuff is in that book. So they came for us. And Mr. LaRouche just said, well, what's true is what's true. If you're in it, you're in the book. So that's how that went, right? And so they will change the perception on you. And I think our role, including here today, that's why I mentioned it, there's war culture. Check it out. Everybody knows, you look at the video games, look at all that stuff, look at the movies, look at the number of movies which are always either military or paramilitary units of various types and so on. That's the culture into which they will incorporate Black people, except that Black people don't want to go. See, if you don't want to go, then we'll just have to lay out a self-destruction plan for you, but we will get you to pay for that. Pay us for your self-destruction, okay? Why should we waste, right, our profits on your destruction? Why don't we get you to loot yourself and kill yourself? That way we rid the planet of you to the degree we can. We got to deal with all those people in Africa coming up, which we would like you to help us do if you'd like to. But if you won't help us, well, we just will commodify you and then you will kill yourself and pay us for it.
It's interesting, in our memorializing our young men, I mean, primarily, that's more than anybody else. We have, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 rappers whose mothers have come and planted trees for them in our memorial garden. And one of the young brothers, I was completely unfamiliar with several of them, but one of them was blowing up and he was on MTV specials, young brother named Bambino Gold. And there was a push, you know, again, the art being the hammer that shapes reality. There was a push to be real. Oh, he rapping trap music, but he ain't just rapping. He really living it. And they push that. And you see it time and time again cost these young brothers their lives. You know, in his case, it was so heartbreaking. He was kidnapped and there was a 17-day search for him. They dumped him out here in Macon County. And his mother, you know, the sheriff, they wouldn't even let his mother see him because of the way this brother had been done. But the bunch of young, basically children, just a little bit over what we would consider children, and they're being shaped, you know, by something that was here when they got here. They walk right into it. They shaped by it. They say, I'm living it, and blam, there you have it. You know, so that's a really important piece. And the fact that you're dealing with war culture. Again, everybody, you know, this is just a little conversation, but this April, we will have 3 days of symposiums that will be put together there, put together as not just, you know, dry or interesting even conversations, but these will be a lot of performance, a lot of art, plays, so that it's very palatable to the youth who don't have, I think Brother Nile, he said they had an attention span of drunk butterflies. Brother Wesley did have to drop off. He wanted to extend everybody his thanks, you know, and gratitude for the way we received him. So we'll be looking forward to having him back. Brother Dennis mentioned a book called Dope Inc., which lays out the history of the dope trade. You know, these are things that help you to be able to perceive and comprehend reality a lot clearer, and then to be able to communicate it to the people that you're trying to reach. So we hope to have some of the authors of that book at our next conference, along with some other things. This depopulation agenda, we want to like lay it all out. We're going to go into the pharmaceutical aspects of it. We're going to talk about Molly and Percocet. We're going to talk about empire Oh my goodness, not an empire of their own. That's that was Neil Gabler, how the Jews created Hollywood. The Sackler family, who just also happened to be Jewish, you know. But when you roll their history back and see the role they played in changing the way medicine was perceived and marketed. These were the people. Arthur Sackler produced Valium. They produced that and created a market for it before they came with the opioids. You know, it's really something to watch the marketing genius of these people who successfully marketed opioids to China. That blew my mind. How do you market heroin to China? And these cats did it. Pfizer was given their start by the Sacklers. It was really interesting. So we'll be getting into that history and laying it out with the receipts so you can look at it and examine it. Because if somebody is telling you, hey, I got a new shot for you and it's going to protect you from everything, then you probably want to know the history of who else they done shot and what they shot with. So I will pass this back to Nile, and I know it's getting on time, y'all. We got it's 3:48. Can we go to 4 o'clock? Is that okay?
Is it,
We can stretch. Okay.
Yeah, we can stretch now.
Okay. So what's your questions, brother Nile? What you got for us? Or for them?
Well, I would like to briefly focus once again on the scope of what we're dealing with, which is pop culture in general, and globalization, because that's the direction that the world is going in. In April, we'll talk about why that is the case. But pop culture is now the symbol of globalization. It's where you bring elite and mass cultures together, okay, and they cross-pollinate each other, right? Right now, globalization is the process by which businesses develop international influence and make mega stupid amounts of money, okay? So countries and borders and flags and armies mean nothing now, okay? We're talking about the power and the influence of multi-level corporations, and the way we, as Black people in America, figure into this is that we are the agents of creating global pop culture. I mean, when we sneeze, you know, global pop culture catches a cold. Whatever we do, music, dress, gym shoes, speech, whatever it is we do, everybody picks up on it and runs with it, okay? It's always been like that. In the 30s, Caucasians said, this is new. Dance craze sweeping America. It's called the Charleston. Black people were doing the Charleston in their living rooms, having rent parties so they could pay the rent. So this is the way it's always been this way, okay? The thing about pop culture that makes it inherently dangerous is it mixes fact with fiction, okay? And it's more powerful at disseminating ideas and images and knowledge than anything else. The problem with us being the authors of pop culture, global pop culture, is that if our ethics and morality is askew, then that's what we're sending out. And everybody else is picking up on it and mimicking that because they think it's hip because it came from us, okay? All of it. Like I said, music, dress, speech, food, whatever you want to, you know, whatever you want to apply to that. And because it's a multifaceted contaminant of our consciousness, we continue to supply the world with, I won't say garbage, but the trends that make it easier for racist man and racist woman to subjugate us, okay? Not here, not just here, but wherever there are people of color on the planet. We give them the ammunition, we give them the means to do this. because we like I said, we are the authors of pop culture, and that's a major problem. It's a major problem. When everybody around the planet starts doing what we do, and we have no control over that. It's a major problem. See? I was having a conversation with somebody about BTS, these little Korean boys, jumping around, and somebody asked the question, where did they come from? And immediately, I mean, it wasn't even 10 seconds. Somebody said new Kids on the Block, and what's that other one? Backstreet Boys. I said, what? Excuse me? What are you talking about? These guys weren't even itching their daddy's pants 20 years ago. Okay, where did that come from? Where did boy bands come from? Let's come on. New Edition, Boys to Men, Jackson 5. Before them, Five Steps, Ooh Child. So what are you talking about? Again, we are the creators of these things. We do this inadvertently. This is what we do. We just create this stuff. We give them the fodder for pop culture so that they can they have the ammunition to subjugate people, unfortunately. And we supply that.
Cool. Well, I think we about got just a little time left, and maybe we can close out with Brother Enoch giving a little bit of a demonstration of how the hip hop detox does.
Just before that, one other reference for people. I got one reference for you. Look this up. It's a Rand Corporation report. It's called, I don't know if you can see it there. You won't be able to see it. Called the Internet of Bodies. The Internet of Bodies, Opportunities, Risks, and Governance. Now, some of you know about the World Economic Forum because we're talking about globalization, right? Davos, Switzerland. There's a report I was trying to locate, and it seems to not any longer be available, that they did on what they called the Internet of Bodies. What is that? It is what it sounds like. It's the idea of figuring out ways to directly utilizing various technologies, tap the brain, tap perception, change it, alter it, and shape it. Now, if you were going to go in that direction with the technologies like iPhone and so forth, you got to have a way to cause people to wish to get into that. That's what your popular culture is for. It's like the jingle that the Good Humor Man or the Mr. Softy truck or whatever you have, right? The ice cream truck. You have to have a song that brings the people to buy the ice cream.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. So I just wanted to put that in so that that's where we're going in terms of that globalization piece and culture. And the depopulation is the natural effect that you'll get out of it. Unnatural effect you get.
Right.
All right. Well, first, I got to shout out my brother Nile Muhammad. I saw him in the chat, and we go back like car seats and fat crayons. I remember him in the beginning. So I had to shout him out. And I want to thank everybody for just coming and participating. And, I know, like I said, any one of these brothers could have did the whole piece themselves. And we splitting it up like splitting a mouse between 7 hungry cats. So I don't want to rush, Brother Enoch. I want you to go ahead, close us out, but take your time and do it like you like to do it. And I think we might have had a request for Brother Phenom and that 7 deadly sins or whatever that was that he had. I don't know, but I thought I saw a request for that.
Well, Brother Speed, when you mentioned the Internet of Bodies, well, when you pull that up, I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. Can you all see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know if this was one of the reports you were looking for at reform.org.
Mm-hmm.
And we're entering the era of the Internet of Bodies.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Huh? Go ahead.
No, you got it. You go ahead, because I want to take your time.
Collecting our physical data via a range of devices that can be implanted, they can be swallowed or worn.
All
I don't think I don't have to read no more.
right. Right.
This is a huge problem. So I just wanted to pull that up because I'm going to dig more into this because it also goes into some information that I've read before, but it also adds to the reality that we have to be willing to research because, you know, it's one thing to say go to Google for everything. However, you got to understand that you have to ask the right questions and be willing to dig. And there's certain things that you can't find on Google because it has not been put on Google yet. So you may have to be the one to put that information on Google or on the internet in some way. So, so with those who are present, please hit the chat and let me know what is your favorite genre of music? Because everybody don't listen to rap or hip hop on here, and we're not looking for everybody to be a quote unquote expert in hip hop. However, please, whatever genre of music you love to listen to, put it in the chat. I see Amzai hitting with the jazz. Okay.
Dennis said he liked country and western.
Western, okay. Hey, you got a sister at the Super Bowl. She was a country western singer. She sung the what they call the national anthem, which is a whole nother conversation. They had the sisters Mary singing "Lift Every Voice and Sing," which has never happened as far as I remember. "Lift Every Voice and Sing" was sung during the Super Bowl, but they had it maybe 10 minutes before the national anthem, and they had them on the outside of the stadium singing "Lift Every Voice and Sing." So I thought that was an interesting, you know, aspect of the this past weekend Super Bowl. I see gospel, R&B, blues, jazz. Don't be scared, you all. Go ahead and put whatever genre of music you like, because I know you listen to some kind of music, some form, some fashion. Now, we're going to go quickly into a couple of things that I think hopefully will kind of bring everything that we're saying full circle, because there's so many powerful elements that have already been communicated. And my goal is to make sure we kind of go into a full circle in the sense of looking at what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it's so necessary for the conference for us to promote and market and talk up the conference that is coming up, because you can't do all of this in a very short period of time. You do need days, and you need to have an opportunity to be able to meet with people and discuss, whether we did it virtually or in person. You need that time. So Dr. Barbara Sizemore, an ancestor who very powerfully worked in the educational field, she has a model called the problem, cause, solution, implementation model that she popularized, right? And we have been functioning in that vein, looking at the problem of the culture or lack thereof, and what has caused us to have a lack of real culture, and what are some of the solutions and what we need to take action on. And so we've been scraping the surface of these things. However, we are functioning within the framework of this model. So again, we give love to Dr. Barbara Sizemore for her contribution. Now, some of you all are familiar with this. However, we won't go into a deep dive. However, what we're about to engage in is detoxing or removing the poison, which at the root of all poisons are lies and half-truths and myths. We want to look at how these institutions within society, there's a certain particular science that must be applied. Because if we can acknowledge our mistakes and correct our errors, we can become part of the highest science there is. However, there's something blocking these institutions from doing what they're supposed to do, and they're giving less than what they're supposed to give. So like these droplets of water that we see on the screen, hopefully you can see it pretty well, we all understand that climatic conditions can change the liquid into ice and back into a liquid or even a gas or steam, depending upon the environment. And so if the environment that we exist in what we call the United States of America, this socioeconomic political system that we reside in, if there's an unwillingness to do the science, the highest of sciences, which will allow for us to attain humanity and be in motion towards our divinity, if we are not part of that science, then that means that the game that Brother Dennis Speed was speaking of it most definitely is a game of death. And that game of death has accelerated. So I don't want you to take, just what we're saying for face value. I want you to look at how in the culture they give you ideas of how the game is played and how it's done. This is from a 1974 movie. Some of you all may remember it. I'm going to play it, and then we're going to dig into it a little bit. Get ready, Brother Nile.
It's you liberals who have lifted them up, Howard.
Paul, you conservatives make a mistake. You can't afford to strangle hope in people. Without hope, people become dangerous.
No, Howard, you liberals have let them invade our society. You give them jobs, political jobs.
Paul, you missed the point. It's only the smart ones we move up.
That makes it even worse.
No, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us. But if we raise him up into white society, we neutralize him. He feels compelled to try to act like us. He loses his identity and his racial anger, if he has any. He becomes alien to his brothers. They realize he sold them out and they grow to hate him. He becomes worthless to them and safe for us. No, thank you. In fact, in his love for the creature comforts, except for his color, he's become one of us.
Let's stop right there. Let's pull from this, and we would like audience participation. What did you all know? I don't even want to say anything right now, but what did you extract from that particular movie? Brother Nile, you remember the name of that movie?
Not right offhand, brother. Man, that movie was out quite a long time ago, about 40 years, I think.
Yes, 1974 it came out.
Yeah.
Who in the chat think they know the name of that movie? Oh, I think I got somebody in the chat. Oh, somebody gonna say I wasn't born yet. Well, I was only 3 years old. I was a 1971 baby. It's called Trick Baby.
Trick Baby, that's right.
Trick Baby. Somebody said white boy. But what did you pull out of the game? They laid the game out in 1974. They just put it into a movie and just told you.
Yeah. Well, the 70s was a time for cinema to be revealed in terms of, I'm sorry, secrets to be revealed in cinema to Black folks, but we didn't pick up on it the way that we should have. Another one was Spook Who Sat by the Door, but Trick Baby, basically in a nutshell, it's telling you that the drug culture in the United States and the fact that rock music invaded and took over the United States, this was not an accident. It didn't happen just because the Beatles showed up and everybody got into British rock music. No. In fact, if you do any independent research, okay, on the internet, you need to go and punch up the Tavistock Institute and take some time and read it, because it is responsible for basically the greatest mental hypnosis and brainwashing campaign in the history of mankind. Okay, it was laid into practice in the 40s, and so it took a long time to develop it, but they've been working on it all that time, and now it's refined to the point where it's common practice. This is what they do, and this is the way they do it. So what you saw in that movie or that clip with those Caucasians sitting around the table, they're conducting business. They're designing strategy on how they can maintain their power. What is power? The ability to determine circumstances. And that's what they're going to do. That's what they do, and this is what we need to put under the microscope.
And regardless,
conversation, man. We got to talk about this.
And irregardless if one has a different title than the other, the one side of the bird may call itself a Republican, another may say Democrat, or they use the language of conservative and liberal, but whatever language they use is the same bird.
Makes no difference. They share the same value system.
Makes no
difference.
It makes no
difference what they call themselves.
It makes no difference. And that's the reason why we assert that when we start talking about popular culture, just going back for a moment to what we were discussing, we're really not dealing with what culture really is about.
Right.
We're not dealing with civilization and enlightenment.
Right.
We're not dealing with improvement and kindness, proper popular kindness, popular politeness. No, we're dealing with popular ignorance. We're
Right.
dealing with popular incompetence, popular rudeness, crudeness. That's what we're dealing with. And because we're dealing with that, my apology in terms of what Brother Speed was saying, we're not dealing with it oftentimes because either we don't recognize we're involved in a game, or we do recognize it. However, we don't know what to do because the goal is to act like you're not in a game, even though you know this is a game. And so we must adapt the attitude, the orientational tendency of thinking that we must hurl truth at falsehood until we knock out his what?
Brains.
His brains. We got to be willing to fight lies with truth, fight half truths with whole truths, fight partial truths with total truths. We got to be willing to fight the relative truths with universal truths. When Brother Wesley was talking about the Illuminati, and not the boogeyman Illuminati, but the real Illuminati. When you're talking about the real Illuminati, then you begin to recognize that the Illuminati's treasures are always buried. And we're talking about the 250 million or more skeletons that reside in various parts of the land and sea. Because many of us don't go back far enough to recognize the 64 years of our inheritance, or 64 years of our existence that was taken away and hidden, and how we were totally changed up into a different type of being over a 64-year period. So that's 64 years of hidden history. We're not in contact with that in a way to make us understand that, hey, yeah, it took some generations to get us into this position, but guess what? We can reverse the process. However, we got to be engaged in the process, and it's a generational work. So in light of that generational work, let's look at what we've adopted that was not originally ours. However, it is our responsibility to get rid of it. And we dealt with this with a group of young brothers at Leo High School here in the city of Chicago. And we just want to share with you how, in the language of the 7 deadly sins or defects that become a conflict in our lives, let's look at how we deal with it in a hip hop, quote unquote, spoken word detox kind of way. Let's dissect this real quick, and I'm going to freeze it on different conflicts, or what they call sins. Listen carefully, the 7 deadly.
Call it an observation. Me and my mans was having this conversation about what's happening in Rap's nation. He had a cigarette just lit, hanging at the end of his lips, and as he spoke, smoke made his eyes squint. He had production skills, make the average producer flinch, but he one of us, stuck in this Chicago bullshit. Took a pull of his square as the ashes fell, the look in his eyes showed he had something to tell. He paused and exhaled, my mind started to dwell on if his words would hit me like a live missile shell. He released and started to speak over this hiss. Grease popping, Japanese wife was cooking him fish. Said, I've been in this for years, now I'm watching the trends. I seen careers begin, then suddenly end. He said this music is a trap and time is running thin and it's telling you all gonna fall to them 7 sins. Y'all, there's something going on in this world of rap. If you don't pay attention, you'll forever be on your back. It's 5 sins committed and only 2 left. If you don't watch your step, you next. My mind starts to run its course, of course, because now I'm open, I'm hoping. I don't discover nothing tragic automatically. This brother, he pointed to me initially that the first to die from the 7 sins was Eazy-E. Gangster, world renowned, going from town to town, putting it down, hitting with that OG sound. But with the fame, it was a must for him to bust. He died from AIDS, he didn't control his lust. But for us, that wasn't enough to notice what was happening. The pattern of the 7 sins was unraveling. No, keep your eyes wide. I saw it all from the outside. I watched Pac die from pride. And still with the demons he was battling, was proud of the thug life. Even got it tatted on his abdomen. He expected. Thug life is hectic, and sooner or later it's gonna stop his heart. Like his counterpart, B.I.G. Papa, His Highness, obviously the livest one from Starving Son. #1 chef in Hell's Kitchen kept beef cooking. Till the strong arm of wrath came looking. Wrath cometh quick upon the child, Biggie got brooked in the truck with the blow. She's foul. Listen to the child. I need to tell the whole world about it now. Hey, y'all, there's something going on in this world of rap. You don't pay attention, you'll forever be on your back. And it's 5 sins committed and only 2 left. If you don't watch your step, you next. Still with the demons he was battling, was proud of the thug life. Even got it tatted on his abdomen. See, he expected that thug life was hectic, and sooner or later it would stop his heart. Like his counterpart, B.I.G., Papa His Highness. Obviously the livest one from Stiver's son. #1 chef in Hell's Kitchen, kept beef cooking. Till the strong arm of wrath came looking. Wrath coming quick upon a child. Biggie got built in the truck with the blow. This is foul. Listen to the child. I need to tell the whole world about it now. Hey, y'all, there's something going on in this world of rap. You don't pay attention, you'll forever be on your back. And it's 5 sins committed and only 2 left. If you don't watch your step, you next. To light another cigarette, his speech pattern broke. Talk about this is enough to make a boy chain smoke. It almost make me want to cry. Rapper Freaky Ty, the life he lived was strenuous, but still brothers was envious. They hit him swift. Then the 5th one, big pun, skills lovely. Ate too much, died from gluttony. I felt so sick. Like the detective when he found that the cripple was Kaiser Soze. It all made sense. See, the last 2, sloth and greed. The last 2, sloth and greed. Pills in his weed. Got us too high for the young to see. That greed got these niggas thirsty to pull triggers for the chromed out trucks, riches and freaky chickens. And just when you got it all trying to live your happy day, your best man will leave you smoke. Ask Jam Master Jay. Then that last is a sloth that's gonna cut. What? Then that last is a sloth that's gonna cut us off. The beast got us making music that's too damn soft. Commercial hits, brainwashing our kids. We still laying down, but we wonder what the problem is. The industry got us all killing each other. It's genocide. Death through the speakers as the beast ride.
What?
Death through the speakers as the beast ride.
What?
Death through the speakers as the beast ride. Death through the speakers as the beast ride. Death through the speakers as the beast ride. It's something going on in this world of rap. If you don't pay attention, you're gonna forever be on your back. And it's 5 sins committed and only 2 left. If you don't watch your step, boy, you next.
You can go ahead and unmute and give us a little snaps, give us some snaps. That's cool if you want to give us some snaps, those who are able to do so.
Listen.
Of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher.
That's right.
History is our guide, for if we know what was, then we have a better understanding of what is. And if we know what is, we are more prepared for what is yet to come. Notice that we're more prepared because the reality is that we are at a time where we have to ask the question so we can get answers, so we can do work. The goal is to put action into what we're talking about and what we're researching and discussing so that we will be able to fight against those things that are geared to take not only our lives, but the lives of our children and our children's children's children. So this is a generational work. And we have to keep in our minds that truth is truth, even if no one believes it. However, a lie is a lie, even if everyone believes it. And many times we may feel a certain way about this because it puts pressure upon us. However, I'm quite sure some of us remember there's a scripture that talks about greater is he that is in me. I know you all remember something about that. We'll go deeper into that because we have to remember that the kingdom of God is not just within, it's among us. And that's why when you have 2 or more of us gathered for higher principle, higher purposes, gathered in the name of all that is good and righteous, we have one in the midst of us that backs us up. So we keep this in mind because, it's kind of moving fast on me. We keep this in mind because when we deal with the institutions, we have to keep in mind that institutional work starts with self first, then others. Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that very clearly, self first, then others. So when we look at the institutions, are we really getting a definition of self and God? in whatever institution we call the spiritual house that we may attend, whether it's church, mosque, synagogue, cathedral, temple, are we really functioning with a government that is taking on accountability and responsibility for its citizenry and for the people that it governs? Are we really sending our children to a school that's geared to educate them or draw out their greatness, or are they being indoctrinated? Do we really have businesses that are really there for the purpose of providing goods and services, and they're in business for the business sake? They're in business knowing that the byproduct of business is getting some type of compensation. However, you're there not just for profit. And so the problem becomes that with every institution, lastly, the home, when we're not residing in a functional institution like home, then we're not developing males and female towards manhood and womanhood. So then there could perhaps be a marriage union to come because we have developed the individual self in such a way and put them on a course so they can evolve from maleness to man and femaleness to woman. And that womanhood and manhood is on the journey towards godhood. We have a less than situation that is not by accident, it is by design. So that's why this culture under siege is the tip of the iceberg. It's the beginning. And we truly desire for all of us to stay in tune, make sure you ask questions, get answers so you can do more work and inspire others to do work. This culture under siege is in the very beginning stages, and this war on murder begins with self first. Now, before I play this particular artist's sincere presentation, on June 17th of 2017, the Honorable Brother Minister Louis Farrakhan allowed for us to present on a national webcast the Hip Hop Detox Reset presentation. Within the presentation, there's a brother and sister who's part of a coalition here in the city of Chicago called Solace Souls. And in this presentation, he characterizes many of our people in the state that they're in. However, he also goes into those things that need to be constantly pulled on so that we can begin to take and help our people stage by stage as we journey, because this is a process and we have to constantly be involved in that process in some way so that as we see ourselves evolve and grow, we can help others evolve and grow. This is Blackbird.
Why you wanna fly, Blackbird? You ain't never gonna fly. Why you wanna fly, Blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. No place big enough for holding all the tears you're gonna cry. 'Cause your mama's name was lonely and your daddy's name is pain. And they call you Little Sorrow, 'cause you'll never love again. So why you wanna fly, Blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly.
They used to ask me, why you want to fly, Blackbird? Because your wings clipped at the seams, and it seems you're only being pushed to the back. Bird, or to the black burbs, because gentrification is patiently waiting at our black curves. It's the difference between gated communities and Palatine and growing up in Harvey tents. Go either place, you will see two different faces, no Harvey Dent, and they brush it off like it's politics. While they suck away our blood life like a politics. The war is coming. I say the war is coming. And while I'm reciting and lighting, it'll probably be a race war before I finish lines. Genocide is $1 billion company, and they race wars like they trying to make it to the finish line. And they race wars when they finish line and take more to replenish lives. So why you want to fly, Blackbird? Hey, you know what they call a flock of crows? A murder. Hey, you know what they call a dope spot? A trap. Now how ironic is that? Because whenever the cops come, that's always a murder in the trap. Burner or the strap. Guilty or innocent, the burns will not back fact. Everybody want to be black. Until it's time to be black. Then you standing in that privilege line trying to... I said fact. Everybody want to be black. Until it's time to be black. Then you standing in that privilege line trying to get your seat back. Don't you know I see sections in Section 8 filled with kids who done asked to be here, coming from C-sections to sex at 8, and you call them pigeons. Their self-esteem is being deemed by vultures, so they parrot to a cockatoo. What's on your bird, man? Let's be real. Let's be realistic. The caged bird sing, cause sing a prison. Lost time and he'll never get it back. All for some chicken scratch. Figure that. Once a month phone calls and tear-fueled visits, it's making them bitter black. So why you want to die, black boy?
You ain't got no one to hold you. You ain't got no one to care. If they only understand it, nobody wants you anywhere. So why you wanna fly?
I mean, why you want to fly, Blackbird? Don't you know the higher you go, the heavier that load? That American eagle don't pray for blackbirds, they prey on blackbirds, especially those who got worth. So I advise you act first. Newsflash. I say newsflash. I hear they auctioning off flags for sale. Okay, bet, cool. So how much for the swastika? 11 million Jews? I bet, cool. So how much for the Confederate? 15 million blacks? But wait, it only took 9 for that. Oh, the rest is being paid for courtesy of the Civil War? Nah, that was 40,000 blacks, I believe. Oh, the rest of the balance is being handled by the CPD? So what you think the price is on the red, white, and blue? I ain't got a clue, but I bet you it's black card approved. Willie Lynch, that's a nigga name. Just ask Rachel, that's Twitter fame. You know, Rachel from the NAACP. Just ask Rachel, that's Twitter fame. Question. Have they ever raped you, Rachel? Enslaved you, Rachel? Charred and feathered bathed you, Rachel? And even now they still don't hate you, Rachel? Cause that ain't you, Rachel. Lately, I've been so tired, but I'm so sleepy. I envision, I'm trying to envision. And I would see with my third eye, but it's filled with cataracts and crow's feet. This muse ain't to be amused. So don't just be fly, Blackbird. Just fly. Come on.
So this is part of our work collectively. We gotta free the people. And so I want to just close this part just by saying that for all those who have stayed and enjoyed, the remaining part of this backstage, we truly appreciate it because we gotta help ourselves and help others to fly, and we have keys that's so necessary for us to share the keys so that we can get out of the position of not knowing and not doing, because that right there, that's the unfortunate state of many of our people. And because we work a lot with a lot of youth and young adults, those who are whether they're in elementary school, high school, college, and even those who have either just came out of the penitentiary, or we are working with those who are part of a program to prevent them from going because they've been identified as the shooters on the block here in the city of Chicago. The reality is that whatever part of the work that we're doing, we have to be part of that process, knowing people gonna fly as they get more and more information and inspiration and direction, because we're able to access them on the highest of levels to show them that their value and their self-worth. So I'll stop right here, Brother Scott, so I don't go past the 4 o'clock or the 4:30 hour. So thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you. Thank all of you. Sister Erica, I think got a screen share, and I would ask you, excuse me, for anyone in the audience, Brother Enoch has a book, you can see the cover behind him, called Poison. Any publications that you, Brother Nile, Brother Dennis would like to share that people can get to know you or your work better. And I would like to ask anyone for closing remarks.
Well, I just like people to know that I'll be moderating a conference tomorrow for the Schiller Institute. It's going to be called, what do you call that? 100 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock. Why the world needs a new architecture, something like that. But 100 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock. That's the important part. Yeah. So I'll be moderating that tomorrow, 10 o'clock to 10 to about 1. So I'll just make that one, and otherwise people can catch me through you, Scott.
Okay, yeah, and Schiller Institute, how do they get to your conference?
Yeah, the Schiller Institute site, what's that, schillerinstitute.org, is it? I'm sorry, I always forget.
It may be, and it's on YouTube. If you hit Schiller Institute on YouTube, you can get there.
It'll come up, right?
Yeah, and they have very meaty conferences, lots of information. You know, it's very intellectual. If you want to stretch your mind, grow a little bit, their conference is a top flight. Brother Nile, any closing remarks? You're on mute.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes,
focus on pop culture led me down the road. I saw a graphic that Brother Enoch had on the screen about research. And when you do research, I mean, we were told that research is 2 Greek words, re, which means again, and specto, which means to look. So to look again, over and over and over, that's research. So in doing research on pop culture and looking back over the things that I've done in the past, I had an idea about something, and I just want to share it very quickly. I'm going to give you a very, very short list of TV shows that were on in the 60s. These were fantasy, some were dramas, some were comedies, but all were science fiction, okay? And you probably, as a lot of people that are listening to this now, they've heard of these shows, they've never seen them, but this is the type of programming that was on CBS, NBC, and ABC at the time. Okay, very quick. This is a short list. My Favorite Martian, Batman, Green Hornet, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, Star Trek, The Munsters, The Addams Family, Twilight Zone, Doctor Who, Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., The Flying Nun, Time Tunnel, Wild Wild West, Outer Limits, and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. All right. So these are science fiction fantasies. Now, what was going on in the 50s? 60s, I'm sorry. What was going on 40 years ago? Okay, Malcolm was assassinated. Dr. King was assassinated. Medgar Evers was assassinated. The Kennedy brothers were assassinated. Okay, and the backdrop of all of that was Vietnam War, right? A very unpopular war, by the way. All this was going on at one time, so they had to anesthetize the people to keep them calm. Drugs were working on the students, and all of the campuses. CIA saw to that. So the drugs were working on the students, and this mindless TV was going on for the adults. So you're looking at, subterfuge, smoke screens and diversions to keep the people off the minds of what was going on. So now let's bring it all the way up to the 2000s, to the 20s. Okay, what is the subterfuge? What is the entertainment smoke screen, entertainment diversion now? Okay, superheroes, right? Still fantasy, science fiction, making scads of money, just stupid money. Okay, Black Panther made $700 million. Okay, $700 million, and the last installment of Spider-Man made $720 million. Right? This is ridiculous amounts of money for fantasy to keep people's minds on what's going on. So the question is, what is it that's going on that you need to be diverted from? So we need to stay woke, because it's some of it's here and a lot of it is still coming down the pipe. So don't be maneuvered out of position.
Along with sports.
Let's not even go into that. 32 NFL teams, 1 black coach, 70% black workforce. Let's not even talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that's not today, but that's an important conversation for us to get into.
In April.
In April. That's an important conversation to get into. So, Brother Enoch and Brother Dennis, I know Brother Dennis just said something. Enoch, any closing remarks?
I would like to remind everyone, I put this on earlier during the first part of the presentations. I'll pull it up again. The why. Poison is everywhere. It surrounds us in the air, in the water, in the food. Poison is transmitted through the pen, the paint, the electronic devices, the sound and airwaves. Poison moves through words spoken and unspoken, in text, in audio, in poetry, in storytelling, in speech, in hand movements, in facial expressions. Poison is loud, is soft, is hard, is attractive, is appealing in rhythmic patterns laced on top and within a beat. Poison in our habits, in our clothes, in what we wear, how we wear it, when we wear it, why we wear it, in our use of time and space, and why we do what we do. Poison engulfs the 7.7 billion inhabitants upon the earth. Poison blinds. It energizes till it numbs you. It enlivens you till it chokes you. It frees you till it enslaves you. It holds your attention, then leaves you empty. Poison is excess. Poison is abuse. Poison is addiction. Poison is injustice. We are at a time where we have to recognize what we're dealing with, because sometimes we'll say it's all love and it's really all poison. We'll say that we're doing it for the culture. You're really not doing it for the culture, you're doing it for the poison. And of course, the popular saying, I know Brother Scott, Brother Nile, Brother Dan, we heard the saying, pick your poison. And usually when they say pick your poison, it's something that's dealing with some alcohol usually. However, in these days and times, it covers a whole spectrum, because poison is so wide and varied right now. You have all types of poison. So my statement is, let's stay aware, starting with self first, because that allows for us to stay here long enough so that we can learn better ways of living this thing called life.
Excellent. All right, and Sister Eric, you want to put that back up? And I'm going to remind you one more time, check us out, join our mailing list. Find us on any of our social media pages. Join us for updates. We'll be chopping this up and putting this out, but y'all want to come and see us in April. God bless you, and you have an excellent rest of your evening, y'all. Peace.